Good morning. Today is Thursday, the second day of Cheshvan, and we continue letter 25 in Igeret Hakodesh, in the Tanya. And again, let's begin with tzedakah. Kedela tzedakah shemekareves es hageula. And we're getting towards the end of this letter. As we said, this is a long letter. The Alter Rebbe talks about explaining a statement that the Baal Shem Tov said, that is recorded in a book called the Tzava Sarivash. And that is that when there is a goy, a Gentile, that is not a lover of a Jew, tries to interfere in the Jew praying, we should know that Hashem is in him, in that Gentile. And that was a statement that needed explanation. Because what does it mean? That those who are opposing the Baal Shem Tov, they question this. How could you say such a thing, that Hashem dwells in that person who is opposing God? And Alter Rebbe explained here in length in this chapter, we explained that really Hashem is in every single creature in this world. Everything comes from Hashem. And we explained in length in the last few days how this is in the Jew, that you have Hashem's the faculties that Hashem invested in the Jew. You have the emotional, you have the intellectual faculties, which correspond to the spiritual faculties. And ultimately the speech, when we speak the words of Torah, we elicit or bring down Hashem's speech, which is creating and bringing down the godly energy here. And yet we explain that the same thing, Zeh le'umat zeh, Hashem created the world in a way that even there's a balance, that even in the evil side is also these forces. And Hashem is there in the evil side in a state of exile. And we need to redeem the godly spark that is in exile. And because of that, the Alter Rebbe said, a person should never get angry. Anger shows that you don't believe that it comes from Hashem. So today, in today's lesson, we're going to learn two things. Number one, when there is an exception, when is it okay to get angry? Or at least to appear angry, as we'll soon explain. And number two, how do we really redeem that godly spark that is in the lowest places? In the place of this anti-Semite that tries to stop you. So we're going to explain, number one, when we're saying about not getting angry, that anger is considered like idolatry. This is because of what? Because Hashem, everything comes from Hashem. If everything comes from God, so no matter what happens to you, it is God's making. So there's no point of getting angry at the person that did it. You have to, if someone did something wrong to you, as we said before, it's okay to take him and to court and to get justice, that's fine, but not to get angry. It's like losing the temper, saying like, you don't believe that Hashem makes everything. However, comes the Alter Rebbe and says that there is also an exception. It says everything comes from Hashem except chutz mi'irat shamayim. Hakol b'dei shamayim, chutz mi'irat shamayim. Everything is in the hands of Hashem, in the hand of heaven, except for matters that is fear of God, meaning your moral decisions. When a person does something which is not proper, You can't just say, okay, this is God's decided. God decided that you should do this Avera, this sin. No, this is in your hands. And therefore, says the Alter Rebbe, there is, if you see an opportunity of and that you're able to correct someone that is doing something wrong, yes, it is okay. It is okay to put your foot down and give the person an understanding that this is not the right thing. And sometimes you have to get angry. What does it mean? To show that this is something that you really care about. And he brings example of Moses. That Moses got angry when something happened. Now the Maimonides says that when you educate children, then it's okay to appear. It's not okay to really get angry, because really getting angry is connected with some. It's not a healthy thing in general. But when you're talking about when you want to show a child that something is really serious, you appear to get angry when something terrible is done. But the child should realize the seriousness of the situation. So this is, let's see what the Alter Rebbe says it inside. The Alter Rebbe, "Achar advorim v'emes ha'ele hagluim v'yeduim l'kol." After these words and this truth, which are manifest and known to all, nachzor le'inyan rishon be'inyan hakas. So let us return to the original subject concerning anger. Where a person who is angry is likened to an idolater. Says the Alter Rebbe, when is that the case? When we're talking about mundane matters. V'hainu b'mida de'alma, ki hakol b'dei shamayim chutz mi'ira shamayim. This is so only with regards to mundane matters, because everything is in the hands of heaven except for the fear of heaven. So since everything is in God's hands, there is no reason to become angry. However, with regards to matters involving the fear of heaven, anger does have a place. Meaning, if you'll see something that you need to stop, you got to say something. You got to stand up. If you can avoid to get the person to stop from doing something wrong, you got to do it. Obviously, we know what is the way to get a person to do the right thing. You know, there's the loving way, Avas Yisrael. But here we're talking about a situation when this is the way to get a person to stop. Says the Alter Rebbe, therefore, he says, with respect to heavenly matters, to ward a fellow Jew from transgressing a prohibition, the reason stated does not apply. To say, oh, this is meant to be from Hashem, no. For these matters are not in God's hands, but in man's. Those are things that a person can choose to do the right thing or not. And he brings the example that Moshe Rabbeinu himself got angry. And as it is written, and Moses was angry. I know. Mishum ki Hashem hikro lefanav mitzvah zu le'afrusha me'isura kedei lezakoisei. This was because God caused him to encounter this mitzvah of warding a fellow Jew from transgressing a prohibition in order to make him meritorious. Therefore, this situation is obviously quite different from being angry at someone because of harm or offense. So therefore, in this case, it's okay to be angry or to appear to be angry. However, says the Alter Rebbe, this is only true in a case when you see someone is about to do something and you know you have to show the seriousness and you're going to stop them and you're going to tell them, you're going to see how serious you are, is going to stop. It's not going to do it. So if it's in your hand to stop the person, but what about a situation where a guy tries to interrupt you, or there's something challenge that there's nothing you can do about it. It doesn't matter how much you're going to talk, it's not going to help. What do you do then? Says the Alter Rebbe, this applies only when one is able to prevent transgression by his wrath and anger against his fellow man. In such a case, he is permitted to become angry, as did Moses. We find it throughout the sages, throughout the ages. The prophets, they were upset when things were wrong, and this was to put the people on the right path. But what if there's nothing you can do about it? However, when he is unable to change the situation, for example, as in the case of the heathen who talks and confuses him while he is praying. He's standing and praying, and comes a heathen, an anti-Semite, tries to interrupt you. And what are you going to say? You're going to get angry at him? You think it's going to help? It's not going to help. Yes, obviously, if you can stop him, you stop him. But what if you can't? In Cain, therefore, says the Alter Rebbe, the question really is, why does it happen? That's what you should ask yourself. Basically, what Alter Rebbe is saying, we know that everything is from Hashem, except people's choices. That's not from Hashem. You have to, then you stop him. You make him stop. But what in a situation that you cannot make him stop? Then you have to ask yourself, why is this happening? The question then arises, what is this that God has done to him that a Gentile should disrupt his prayers? And the conclusion must be that there is a reason why this Gentile, that person tries to interrupt you, because Hashem wants to get you to concentrate even more, to have you concentrate to the point that you're completely oblivious of your entire surroundings. It's not easy. But Hashem pushes you to do this exact thing. How? By giving you an interruption. By putting an anti-Semite standing there interrupting, so you will gather your inner strength and completely immerse yourself in davening, in the prayer, in a way that you concentrate so strong that you don't feel your surroundings. And that's why that person is there. That's what Alter Rebbe says. Ein ziskim sheizgaber, kedei sheizgaber, v'yisametz yisa betfilosai, ba'oimek alev, v'bekavona gedola kol kach, ad shelo yishma dibur yanoch. This is so only in order that he prevail and strengthen himself evermore in his prayers from the depth of his heart, and with such intense concentration that he will not hear the Gentile talk. We've seen this sometimes, you're concentrated in a subject that people talk to you and you don't even hear. It happens. Question, what situation that happens? Alter Rebbe says you got to make sure that this situation would be in your prayer. You should concentrate your prayer so strong that you don't hear your surroundings. However, the Alter Rebbe tells us to reach that level is not easy. However, for such a level, one needs a great and intense arousal. You need to arouse yourself to get yourself to the point to understand that you should want to concentrate that way. Should not only the ability to concentrate, but really to be aroused to concentrate that way. That is not easy. And here says the Alter Rebbe is giving us advice. How can you get to that point, to this type of arousal? Says the Alter Rebbe, by focusing on what we have learned in this chapter 25, in this letter 25 in Tanya, in the Igeret HaKodesh. When you learn what we just explained in the whole chapter, that Hashem concentrates and brings down his energy, even in the lowest places, and you ask yourself, why? Why did Hashem put himself into this lowest situation? Why does he give his energy? Why does he give the speech to the Gentile to interrupt you? Where, as we said, Hashem is in there. What's the purpose? There must be one purpose. Because everything in the world is only leading to one place. Everything in the world leads the person to fulfill Hashem's will in this world, to make this world godly. And when you realize that is exactly the reason why Hashem gives life to this guy now to interrupt you, and by using this concentration and doing what you need to do, this is how you liberate the godly spark from exile. This is how you fulfill the ultimate purpose of why Hashem came down to this lowest places, in order to make you stronger. That's what Alter Rebbe says. And the counsel suggested to attain such an arousal derives from this very subject, which means one should consider and meditate on the concept of the descent of the Shechina, the descent of the divine presence, kaviyachol, as it were. Vateret ploim, it descend in wondrous fashion, using the language of the Lamentations of Eicha. Leislabesh nitzutz me'arasa, to have a spark of its radiance invested within the klippos, in the lowest places. It is generally in a state of exile among the klippos, the shells, in order to animate them. Ve'ato apam nitzutz me'arasa mislabesh bebchinas golus derech prat. And now a spark of its radiance vests itself in a particular state of exile, in the speech of this Gentile, who utters words that disturb one's divine service, meaning one's devout concentration during prayer. And as explained above, that God created this opposite that each element of the holy side of the universe having its unholy counterpart on the other side, the Sitra Achra, the evil side. And therefore, V'dibur elyon mislabesh b'dibur atachton. Thus, the supernal speech vests itself in the nether speech, and so on. So the supernal speech vests itself in a lower degree of speech, ultimately descending through a self-screening chain of descent until it provides life force even for the klippas. This indeed is the meaning of the verse that man rules over man to his detriment. What we explained before. What does it mean that man rules over man to his detriment? It is the lower man, the evil, that rules over the supreme, the higher man, the sacred man, but ultimately it is to its detriment. What does it mean? That when you have this godly spark in the goy, and he's trying to interrupt the Jew from doing the right thing, and when the Jew takes, and instead of allowing himself to be distracted and lose hope, and the country becomes even stronger, so then what happened then, he took that godly spark and he extracted it from the guy. And that becomes his detriment. There is no longer a reason for him to be. Again, and that's what the Alter Rebbe says, the Hainu. Shal yedei zeh mis'oirero adam lispalel yoyse bekavana me'umka delibe ad shelo yishma diburav. That is so to say that through this meditation, the individual is aroused to pray with greater devotion from the depth of his heart until he will not hear the Gentiles' words. So instead of stopping the davening became even stronger and better. Now, the Alter Rebbe goes back to the statement that was said in the name of the Baal Shem Tov. That was said that Hashem's, in the book Tzavos HaRivash, it says there that Hashem, the Shechina, Sharta, it manifests itself in the Goy. So this, the Alter Rebbe says, this word is not precise. And he says because the book was written in Hebrew, but the Baal Shem Tov was actually speaking in Yiddish. And therefore, that word was lost in translation. The word the Baal Shem Tov meant to say, what he said in Yiddish, is something that means like in islapshon. Islapshon means that it vested itself, that became vested. Vested is something which is like a garment, that a garment can conceal. It conceals the person. When we say sharsa, that is manifest in there, this has a meaning of that godliness is revealed. When we're talking about the godliness that is in the goy, we're talking about the godliness that is concealed within the goy, not is revealed within the goy. So that's what the Alter Rebbe says, that the words, that word was basically lost in translation. It was not the right word chosen, but the contents is what we just explained in this chapter. As for the compiler of the book Tzavos HaRivash, using the word shorsa, meaning that the Shechina dwelt or abided within this Gentile, or was manifest. Says the Alter Rebbe, Lo yoda lechaven eloshan b'dikduk, he did not know how to determine the precise term, and explains why. Ki Baal Shem Tov zichrono livracha היה immer divrei Torah b'lashon Ashkenaz, b'lashon Yiddish, v'lo b'lashon הקודש. Because the Baal Shem Tov, of blessed memory, he used to deliver the Torah teachings in Yiddish, not in the holy tongue, not in Hebrew. He really meant to say nitlapsha, which means vested. Because shorsa means that the Shechina is revealed, And vested means that the Shekhinah, the godly presence, is concealed within him. V'hainu b'pchinas galus. Nislapsha means that the Shekhinah was vested in a state of exile, and that's why you say v'zeu bifrat imu nochi chula. This distinction explains the emphasis in tzavas arivash, and especially if he's a Gentile, because when we're talking about nislapsha, that the Shekhinah is concealed, that's why it says, especially if it's a Gentile, that the Shekhinah is even more concealed. For then it is so much more in exile. And finally here, the Alter Rebbe touches on another point. And he says about why do we say that the godly spark is in the goy. Why do we call this godly spark the Shekhinah, the divine presence? How could you refer to a godly spark as godliness, as godly presence? So the Alter Rebbe is going to explain that this is not surprising at all. In fact, we find in the Torah that things that are even less holy than a godly spark, like an angel, is also referred to as God, godly or God. And he brings the example of the story of Abraham meeting the angels, as we will explain in a minute. First, the Alter Rebbe ve'ein litmoya im nitzutz min ha'aras shechina nikra b'shem shechina. There is no need to wonder at the spark of the radiance of Shekhinah being referred to in Tzavos Arivash, in the book that we mentioned, as Shekhinah. Why do we call it Shekhinah? Says the Alter Rebbe, that's not surprising. Because we find that even a created angel, which is not a spark of the Shekhinah, is a created being. An angel is a created being. Nevertheless, is referred to by God's name in Parshas Vayera, in the verse, and he said, Lord, do not pass by your servant, according to the commentary of the Ramban, Rabbi Moses Nachmanides. So in that, what is the situation? What is the story there? We know Abraham sees these angels. He thought they were people. And it says, Hashem, using God's name, Al notava ma'alavdecha. Please do not pass your servant, come in. Who was he saying? Who was he saying? Who was Abraham referring to? So there's different interpretations. One interpretation is that Hashem, that word, Adonai, Avram was actually talking to God. This is God's name. So God revealed himself, and when he saw the angels, he says to God, please hold on, I have something more important to attend to. I need to bring in the guest into the house. Which, by the way, this is from where our sages learned that hosting guests, bringing in strangers, people into your house to feed them, is even more important than greeting God. Because that's exactly what Avram did. He said, Hashem, hold on, I'm gonna attend the guest right now. The other interpretation is that the word Adonai has also a different meaning of my masters. Adonai, my masters. My masters is not godly, is not referring to God, it's referring to people. You can say to people here, my master, please come in. As a form of respect or something. So these are the two interpretations. The Nachmanides, the Ramban, takes a third interpretation, and he combines these two interpretations. And he says that Avram was actually talking to the angels, which appeared like men, and he referred to them with the name of God. That's what the Nachmanides says, because indeed an angel who carries out God's mission can be referred to as God. So that's why the Alter Rebbe says, if an angel can be referred to as God, certainly the spark of Hashem, which is vested into everything in this world, is certainly can be called as Shekhinah, the godly spark that is invested in everything, even in the lowest levels of a person who tries to interrupt your service of Hashem. And then the Alter Rebbe brings another example where we find that an angel is referred to as God. Says the Alter Rebbe, "Vatikra Shem Hashem Adever Eleo," and as it is likewise written, and Hagar called the name of God who spoke to her, where we are explicitly told that we are speaking of an angel. In that verse, that story with Hagar, the maid of Sarai, the Torah clearly says that she met an angel, and she called him God. And many more passages like this, that says the Alter Rebbe, we find it in many places, that Hashem, an angel, is referred to as God as well. Now, this is interesting also connecting with this Torah portion, the portion of Noach, where in the prophet Isaiah it's called the flood, the water of the flood is called Mei Noach, the water of Noach. And Alter Rebbe talks about why do we call it the Mei Noach, the water of Noach. The word Noach means like it's a pleasant thing. Noach means pleasant. We call it the Mei Mabel, the water of the Mabel. And Alter Rebbe explains, there's a verse that says, Ma'im Rabim lo yuchlu lechabot et ahava. And many waters cannot extinguish the love. And he says the many waters refers to the waters, the gushing waters of the worries of the world. Cannot extinguish the love that a Jew has to Hashem and the love that Hashem has to a Jew as well. And the Rebbe explains that this is a perfect example. He says, just like waters, when you put water gushing, and you put the dams to stop the water. In the beginning, when you put the dam, it seems like the water now is stopping, is not going. So that's not a good thing. You want the water to come. But then when the water accumulates, it becomes so much more forceful. And it pushes through with much, much more force. And that says the Rebbe is also anything that stops the thing from going. In the beginning, it may seem like an obstacle that tries to stop. But then eventually you realize that this thing that seemed to be a blockage only intensifies the force of the water. And ultimately, the water will gush through along with the rocks that you put to stop the water with much more force. And the same thing, says the Rebbe, is our challenges in life that we have when it comes to serve Hashem. And we find sometimes there's difficulties. But when you realize that these difficulties is there in order to awaken within you a even deeper level of love to Hashem, then those obstacles will not be obstacles. Those obstacles will be only a tool to intensify your love to Hashem, that you should be able to find an even stronger way how to connect to the Eibishter. So this is the end of today's shir. We'll see you tomorrow. Bezrat Hashem. All the best. Have a good day.